low fat, moderate protein, high carbohydrate. Basically, that's what you want to be doing. Old Faithful, the best supplements for pre-workout. I think obviously caffeine is the GOAT and the best one. If you don't like coffee, you can utilize those horrific, what are they called? M150 syrup drink. Obviously on our Instagram, you see Volk and Izzy doing probably 11 to 12%. I wouldn't advise copying the boys. They're two of the most unique athletes I've ever met. Theoretically, like the percentage I gave you before, you can cut more than that. The body can, I say this because it might be on YouTube. All right, my name is Jack Doherty. I am, as of yesterday, the head of combat sports at the Fight Dietitian. I don't know if you guys know, myself and Jordan Sullivan, the Fight Dietitian, we are co-owners of the Fight Dietitian. If you don't know what we do, we basically travel across the world and help combat sport athletes make weight. So basically this is just a chance for an open Q&A, so I'm not going to go kind of bang on about anything in particular. Just give you guys a chance to kind of go back and forth and ask the questions you really want to know. But yeah, so that's about it. I think a bit backstory for myself. I've been doing this for like 6-7 years. I started off basically just studying nutrition. I actually was an accountant before this, if you can believe that. Then I was a youth worker, then I did this. Did back to start at university to do my nutrition degree. Then me and Doherty linked up, and then we met up with people like Frankie, and we all met each other and did that stuff. And we basically just started our careers trying to help with changing the culture around weight cutting, because everyone has been cutting weight for a long time, but we try to kind of cultivate a way of doing that which wasn't harming so many people and stunning their ability to perform as an athlete. And since then, we've kind of just cultivated a business around helping combat sport athletes and kind of multi-sport athletes kind of be the healthiest possible they can be, perform at their best, recover at their best. For the fighters specifically, making weight and performing at their best. Because I think everyone now knows with ChatGTP and all this kind of stuff that you can plug in a lot of things in terms of like how to lose weight, which is basically just eat less, and move more. But we're trying to do a way of these days and kind of how do we, lose weight or get into the body comp we need to be in, whilst also improving our gut health, our overall health, keeping our longevity in the sport and in life, and kind of amalgamating all these things in terms of performance and health, not just kind of helping people lose weight and getting on the scale. But anyway, so I won't blabber on too much longer, but I'll open the floor to you guys. As I said, any and all questions, I'll do my best to answer. If it's highly specific, I don't think I can answer, but we'll go from there. Who wants to start? Okay.
So how would you work the weight cut for, say, evening before, same day weights? Like a lot of amateurs have to do like repeated weigh-ins or evening before. How would you work that?
How do we plan someone's weight cut if it's the same day weigh-in, a tournament style, or the day before? Is that correct? So there's specific kind of parameters which we have for our athletes to be within in terms of what they can manipulate. So I'll start off with, if it's an amateur contest, they're weighing in the same day, and it's just once in that week, you can only manipulate, we say safely, but the kind of parameters is 2 to 5% of your body weight in that week. That's what you want to be at max manipulating. Ideally 1 to 2% for amateur guys, but that's kind of roughly where we want to be kind of aiming for, 2 to 5%. 5% is very much the upper limit. Anything past that, due to the fact of the limited rehydration window and inability to refuel, you're not going to be able to perform at your best. You could be compromised in terms of dehydration and risk of injury, head injury, etc. If it's a multi-day, like a tournament style for amateurs, we get our guys to come in no more than 1 to 2% of their body weight away from that weight. So obviously they can make weight, fuel, repeat. So yeah, as I said, like 2 to 5% for amateurs, same day weigh-ins if it's once in a week. 1 to 2% if it's a tournament. And then that comes down to, that's kind of universal for male and females. And then we get to the day before, which is obviously the UFC structure and stuff like that. So as a general rule, it's like for men, 8 to 10% is probably the maximum we want them to do of their body weight. We do more. I think obviously on our Instagram you see Volk and Izzy doing probably 11 to 12%. I wouldn't advise copying the boys. They're two of the most unique athletes I've ever met. Izzy has a sweat rate of no one I've ever seen before, same with Volk. So the general rule is 8 to 10% is kind of what you want to be aiming for. The pro guys are probably doing, you know, the UFC athletes are probably doing 8 to 10%. Generally, when we first started, everyone was doing 10%. That was the rule. 10% in that week of cutting weight. Now it's around, everyone's going around 8%, which we're finding a lot more manageable. Whereas females, you kind of maximum want to be doing 8% in that. Yeah, so for female athletes, it's 6 to 8%. So it's just 2% lower. And then you ideally want to be, if you're a female athlete, doing around 6 to 8% maximum. But that's the general rule you kind of want to follow in terms of the parameters and what you want to cut in that entire week. So say weigh-ins on a Friday, that's what you want to do from Sunday, the day before, till Friday. So that's the kind of much you want to do, and then you, depending what your approach is and how aggressive you're going with your water load, your fight week diet, then you should see a 1% decrease every day. That can fluctuate depending where you are in the world and how much your sweat rate is. But that's kind of how we do things in terms of planning it. And then when it comes to the final cut, if you see with the UFC guys, this is the best example. They weigh in between 9 and 11 a.m. on a Friday generally. So what we'll do is we'll cut 50% of the weight on Thursday night, let them sleep. They generally sleep horribly, obviously that level of dehydration, and we wake up super early and get the rest of it off, which is usually around 1 to 2 kilos, or under 2.5% of their body weight. I know this is a lot of numbers and it's going to be hard to remember, but just check our Instagram, we've got a lot of that breakdown to kind of give you more specifics.
What's the best way to refuel and sort of keep going when you're in back-to-back sessions like in a place like here?
In Thailand. So the best way to refuel in Thailand doing back-to-back sessions. The thing about Thailand, the thing is navigating your appetite. Because the one thing that's the most detrimental is dehydration. So I think a lot of people confuse the negative side effects of dehydration with underfueling. So what you kind of have to do is find ways of being able to fuel yourself predominantly from carbohydrates. That's going to be your main kind of fuel source to get through training. Obviously you need to have an abundance of protein for recovery. But what we tend to do is, I'll give you an example of what I do with most of my guys and myself when I'm training twice a day, is I'll get up and have 1.5 to 2 liters of water, so like super hydrate before the day even starts. And then if you don't like to eat before training, kind of opting for liquids, so orange juice, Gatorades, smoothies and stuff like that, so easy digestible, keeping the fat and fiber content very low, carbohydrates high. And then afterwards again, just trying to modulate your amount of fiber, because fiber will make you feel really full, same with fats. So I tend to backload my fats and my fiber towards the end of the day when I kind of want to feel full and training's done. But yeah, you have to have an abundance of carbohydrates, make sure you're having an adequate amount of fluids, utilizing things like fruits, lollies, liquid carbohydrates as well, but just try to generally eat within every 2 to 3 hours from there, and just kind of having smaller meals and more frequent, and then trying to eat 1 to 2 hours before and 1 to 2 hours after training is a general rule. But the one thing that people kind of get, is kind of a limiting factor here, is they're having too many, they can't really control it, a lot of fat and oils in the food, so it can make you feel fuller for longer. So trying to opt for a lower fat intake throughout the day, lower fiber, high carbohydrate, moderate protein, and then kind of backload at the end of the day. But that's kind of the way we do things and those kind of things. If you don't have the energy, so if you don't have the appetite to get the food down, going for liquid carbohydrates is probably what I would advise you doing. And things like lollies, who doesn't like lollies? Or if you're American, candy.
What's the best method to cut weight? Like sauna or bath? And like how long would the intervals be?
The best way to cut weight, sauna or bath. I think that the saunas are a terrible idea to do the day of, because obviously you're quite depleted. Infrared saunas are a lot more bearable than traditional saunas, but generally what we do for the final cut is a bath, because you can control the temperature. There's not some random guy chucking water on the hot coals in the sauna. But what we do, as you see on most of our Instagram with the top level guys, is a bath. So we do 41 to 42 degrees. We generally have them in there for anywhere from 20 to 30, or if you're down hooker, 60 minutes. And we're basically, what we're doing is you enter the bath, and then I have my little towel and I'm assessing their sweat rate. So what I do is I'll look at their brow, which is the easiest way to kind of assess what's happening. And when it breaks the sweat, we do a timer. And then I'll wipe that, and then how long does it take to reappear the sweat? And that's kind of how you understand what someone's sweat rate is. And I can kind of, from there, calculate how long they need to be in the bath or how long the process is going to take. It's a lot of calculations, but I can't tell you all the secrets. But that's generally what we do. Like, you get in the bath at 41 to 42 degrees. Anything over 45 degrees will burn you, and we're way too overwhelming. And then we basically take them out of the bath, we'll dry them, and then we'll go into like a wraps. So we'll wrap them up like a burrito, or put them in the new sauna blankets that everyone has, and then kind of go back and forth until weight's made. But again, that's very specific to how much they've got to lose. But the reason we like a bath is also because you can, once the sweat rate started, you can have your arms, you can have your legs out. You're not kind of fully overwhelmed by the heat of the saunas. But the day before, again, so if you've got the morning weigh-ins, the day before, if you see us, we do this with, Volk, Leon, Izzy. What we do is we basically get them to do 3 to 5 rounds on the pads in the sweatsuit, and then I'll basically move them directly into the sauna tent. So we'll probably do an hour the night before, total work, that's just pads and sauna. And then from there, we rest, get up in the morning, and the final cut is generally in the bath. We've had some terrible things happen, like in the UK where the heating system stopped, so we had to utilize the sauna tent and stuff like that. Saudi Arabia, they don't have baths, because who's having baths in 75-degree weather, so we had to kind of figure out kettles and things like that. But yeah, generally the bath is the best way to do it. But to say that, heat acclimate. The guys who heat acclimate, which is basically in the weeks leading up to your fight and the weight cut, getting in a bath or the sauna, whatever you're going to choose to do in the final weight cut, 2, 3, 4 times a week, and gradually building your tolerance. That is the difference between an easy and a hard weight cut. Because the heat acclimation process is basically just, it's what you do here when you come to Thailand. The first week of training is horrible, second week's a little bit better, third week's even a little bit better from there. So your body adapts to the heat. So it adapts to being in the heat or adapts to the processes. So you basically, psychologically, can deal with it better. You actually sweat more efficiently, you sweat more, and it's less cardiac strain. So I don't know if you've seen guys doing ruthless weight cuts and they start to hyperventilate and start to freak out because they're not used to that. And what happens is that if you do start to freak out and the stress hormones start, your sweat rate will dramatically decrease. So heat acclimation, I think, is the most powerful and underused tool to get you ready for your weight cut. I can. What do you want to know about calorie deficits? You can actually get away with being in a quite large calorie deficit for a short period of time before you start to get hormonal issues. You're going to obviously have the issues such as hunger and those kind of appetite and energy level decrements and stuff like that. But in terms of a short period of time, a short notice fight, I've definitely put people in very low calorie deficits to get that required fat off. But I think with calorie deficits, what people get wrong is what everyone does wrong generally, is that they have a fight date or they want to lose weight or get shredded or whatever it is these days, and they go from whatever they're doing and they increase training and they dramatically decrease their intake. That's like the stock standard. What you need to do is find out what your true maintenance is, not from calculating it online, is like understand, have that consistency with your intake. And so you understand that on average I'm eating 3,500 calories, for example. That's my maintenance. And what I would do if I wanted to, say, lose a kilo a week is just drop it by 500. So that's 3,000. So it's like figuring out basically what your maintenance is, which just comes from consistently eating a certain way and averaging out what your intake is and having that knowledge rather than just calculating it. And then going into like a 300, 400, 500 calorie deficit and then basically assess it from there. But the biggest problem with calorie deficits is people don't know how to sustain and maintain them, because Monday to Friday everyone's an angel, Friday night to Sunday, and then basically you've got your whole average is basically a deficit for 5 days, and the last 2 days you've gone ham, and then so your average has gone back up to maintenance. So look at your intake over a 7-day period, average it out, rather than what you're doing on 6 of the 7 days. Does that answer it? Yeah, so just start off, just whatever your maintenance is, start off with a 10 to 15% decrease in your calories. If you want to go really aggressive, you can go 25, 30, but that's going to make you feel very horrible and basically blunt your ability to perform at your best. Because everyone's heard that statement, you've got to eat more to lose more weight. It's not actually because you're having like some metabolic adaptation to eating more. It's this hard to explain, but if you are chronically under fueling, your body will adapt in training and you'll actually have less energy exertion. So your body's very good at adapting to what your training is if you're not fueling. So you'll theoretically and like physiologically start having less energy expenditure. So you're eating less, but you're not, so your net output is terrible. But if you eat more, you actually burn more in training, which means your net loss is actually more. Next question. So what is my protocol for refueling after these sort of weigh-ins? So that's the 3 different types?
Yeah, like the evening before, same day, like
Okay. So the general principle for all of these is that you want low fiber, low fat, moderate protein, high carbohydrate. Basically that's what you want to be doing. Fat and fiber, slow digestion, make you feel fuller for longer. So your ability to keep eating is going to be blunted. So if you keep those low, your body will process the food quicker, which means you'll be hungrier quicker, which means you can get more fuel in. You want to be predominantly getting just fast digesting carbohydrates, thank you, into the body, because that's what's going to be the main fuel source, as I said, to refuel. And depending how aggressive you are with the glycogen depletion, that's going to be the main thing. So how would I do it? Again, have a look through our YouTube and Instagram. We've got specific what we do, but basically I figure out what my athlete's been eating during camp, because we don't want to introduce new foods either. Yes, you don't want to be introducing new foods. You basically just want to be eating what you've been eating in camp, but just a large abundance of those type of carbohydrates you don't digest well. So basically after weighing with the boys, I'm making pancakes, wait for that digest, probably go for a digestion walk. It's a bit of bro science, but it definitely helps. And after that, we do some sort of chicken and rice, again, really basic, maybe a pasta, red sauce pasta, and kind of repeat those things. Like, pancakes, waffles, it's kind of a sweet thing, rice dishes, pasta dishes, wraps and stuff like that. But it's very specific to what the person wants. As long as it's high carbohydrate, low fat, low fiber, moderate protein, I'm happy to kind of oblige to what they want, because you need to make it as specific as possible. Don't force feed, that's a huge one. If you've got a shit appetite because you've cut too much weight, using liquid calories, Gatorade, fruit juice, those kind of things. Lollies, candy. So that's kind of what we do. Just structure it in, eating every 2 to 3 hours, not force feeding, eating smaller meals, listening to the body, making sure you're hydrated. But the biggest, most important part of all of this before you start eating is that, say, same day weigh-ins, or the day before weigh-ins, so the normal pro structure, is that don't eat any food, solids, until 1.5 to 2 hours post weigh. You basically want to be doing fluids only for the first hour and a half. Because what happens is when you're doing a cut, if it's a large cut, basically your fluid volume in your blood starts to decrease. So you don't have as much blood in the body, so the body will then adapt and send all the blood to the organs that you need. So the digestive system shuts down. Basically it becomes less efficient because it's gone to your heart, your liver, all those kind of things, because of the lack of fluid volume. So what happens is if you start trying to eat, it's basically a system that's not fully on. It's half compromised. So if you start, that's why guys throw up, that's why they feel nauseous, because their system's not working. That's why for the first hour and a half, we're drinking lots of fluid, lots of electrolytes, restoring that fluid balance in our blood, and then basically the digestive system will turn back on. So when I start putting food in, the system's working and go through. So that's the premise of those kind of things. Don't introduce new foods. Stick to what you've been eating in camp. First hour and a half, only have fluids and electrolytes. And then you want to go high carbohydrate, low fat, low fiber, moderate protein.
What's the best supplements for pre-workout?
Old Faithful, the best supplements for pre-workout. I think obviously caffeine is the GOAT and the best one. If you don't like coffee, you can utilize those horrific, what are they called? M150 syrup drinks. I'm not sure how much caffeine, but yeah, you want to have between, what's the standard? I think it's like 3 milligrams per kilo of body weight in terms of caffeine. So like anywhere from like 3 to 400, depending how much anxiety you want. But generally we just do pre-workout, it's just caffeine. You can use things like beetroot juice or other vasodilators, like citrulline, doing that like an hour and a half before to get basically increasing the vasodilation, just increasing your ability to have blood flow throughout the body, nutrient delivery, oxygen delivery. We've got caffeine, beetroot juice or vasodilators. Creatine can be had at any time of the day. You don't have to have a pre-workout. It's obviously good for performance. But in terms of pre-workout, I think caffeine's probably the main one. Well, creatine question's coming for sure.
What are you basically your standard sort of every athlete should take?
The standard ones, I think creatine is number one if you're a combat sport athlete, simply not because of the performance benefits, because of the new studies we're finding with the neuroprotective element to it. If you're getting punched in the head constantly, we're trying to prevent the severity of CTE, then that's obviously one of the best ones. A multivitamin, I think most athletes are really bad at eating enough greens, fish oils. If you don't have the greatest gut health, a probiotic, that's kind of the basics of what I recommend. I think the rest of them, like the testosterone boosters, I've never had a client pre and post interventions with Tomcat Ali and all these kind of testosterone boosters. I've never seen a significant difference or the way they've felt. I think a lot of them are just basically wasting time. But again, it's a huge element of individual outcomes and those kind of things. I usually look at someone's blood work and then see what their outcomes are, and then I'll make a supplement protocol specific to that, because otherwise you can just be pissing money down the drain, to be honest. So get your blood work done.
If you're over weight 5 days to go, what's the best, let's say, way to lose the weight? Let's say you're like 10 kg over, or like 8. That's my one question from someone last week. They've had someone, they see like someone that's basically not done their nutrition properly, and they're like really overweight before a fight.
Fuck, I wouldn't fight, but it depends. Like theoretically, like the percentage I gave you before, you can cut more than that. The body can. I don't know how to say this because it might be on YouTube. Your body can cut a astronomical amount of weight, or you can manipulate a lot of water weight throughout the body. Should you? Definitely not. But it's like in those cases, potentially can you make weight? Yes, but his ability to refuel, rehydrate, and perform would be completely compromised. How much stress does he put his kidneys and organs under? Will he be able to rehydrate and put the fluid back around the brain and not basically be potentially knocked out a lot easier or concussed a lot easier? So yeah, if you can do an extreme calorie deficit and a huge weight cut, would I recommend it? Absolutely not. Because the biggest thing I'm finding with this conversations these days about weight cutting, and I've had honestly 20 people reach out recently wanting their 12-year-olds and 13-year-old kids to cut weight. And they want, someone asked me, a 12-year-old who was 46 kilos, if I could help him lose 4.5 kilos in 2 weeks, which we definitely don't do that for people under 18. But cutting weight, the reason we take it so seriously and have these parameters is because it puts huge pressure on the kidneys. I've personally helped people who've lost 50% of their kidney function. The guy that I work with who lost 50% of his kidney function after his fight was pissing blood. His wee looked like Coca-Cola because he was so compromised in terms of his kidney function. Luckily we got it back. It took about a year to get his kidney function back, but there's a lot of cases where guys have lost significant amount of kidney function and had level 1, level 2, level 3 kidney failure. And that kind of lifestyle is not, if you end up on dialysis for the rest of your life, it's a miserable existence. So those are the kind of things you got to think about. Like, people are cutting stupid amounts of weight still, but they're not seeing, like anything else, you're not seeing what's happening inside. So take it very seriously. 5-day nutrition tips for someone who feels better on an empty stomach. This is actually an interesting one because I'll give you a perfect example, which the boys know. Israel actually eats F all on his 5-day. He likes to have a relatively empty stomach. Obviously, he's an absolute anomaly of an athlete, so he can get away with it. But generally, what I do with my guys who don't have appetites, like I had a guy flew me out to Las Vegas one time, and he was so nervous for his UFC fight that he couldn't eat, or he was like dry reaching the whole time, so we had to figure ways. So basically, what I do, like we said before, with like the liquid stuff, is try to basically sneak food in that's kind of very low volume, high calories. So like he was eating a lot of like candy, he's having fruit, we're putting honey on that, maple syrup, but just trying to really like boost up the caloric load and obviously carbohydrates through things like maple syrup, honey, lollies, and those kind of things. If you prefer, just try to like have a few meals and then 3, 4, 5 hours beforehand you don't want to eat. Most of my guys at the pro level won't eat probably 4 or 5 hours before their fight, if not longer, and they'll just snack and just have like sips on drinks and Coca-Cola and things like that, and just keep that carbohydrate intake constant. You don't have to force feed, because the worst thing to do is feel sick in the cage already. When you just cut what, sorry? What's that? Creatine? Oh, you don't have to, if you've been taking creatine for like habitually, like for a long period of time, you don't actually need to cut it out anymore, because what you'll see is when you start creatine, you'll have the first 6 to 8 weeks, your water retention will increase and then it'll go back to baseline. So we cut it out 7 to 10 days just because it psychologically helps a lot of people, but if you've been taking it religiously for years, you don't actually need to cut it out. But to be safe, 7 to 10 days. You're talking about fire week, like yours?
Like training is like sweat a lot.
Yeah.
But making creatine makes like body cramp, like it doesn't make you feel good because you drink a lot of water, but it's just not enough.
Are you saying that the creatine's making you feel like nauseous?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But
So
I still drink a lot of water.
the nausea with creatine is common for some. It's not some people get it, some people don't. I wouldn't be using coconut water to rehydrate, because if you look at the breakdown of the electrolytes, it's actually not that great. It's good, but it's not that great. What you'd be doing is you'll look at, so the general calculation is like your baseline intake, if you weren't even training, is 35 to 45 mils per kilo of body weight. So that's how much you have to be drinking. So for me, I think it's, yeah. But you could, depending how much you're losing in water weight. So the thing is, that that's your baseline, and then you got to weigh yourself before and after each session. And whatever you've lost in that session, you have to drink 125% of that to be able to rehydrate. So you might be having 5 or 6, but if you're losing 5 kilos a day, you might need 8 or 9. That's the thing about Thailand, is that you're constantly playing this catch-up game of hydration. And then you've got to make sure that with yourself, is you maybe using like the oral rehydration solutions you got in the cafe, and having that in the morning after session 1, before session 2, after session 2. Because maybe electrolytes and overall fluid. So you've got to know how much you're losing throughout the day to know how much, because maybe the cramping is that. You could add magnesium in and try as well, and it might be simple, not enough electrolytes or not enough overall fluids.
For example, if they create an outlet, it's like night and day, so you can feel the difference. It's that big, so it's better to take it out.
Yeah, if you can, the thing with creatine, if it's making you nauseous, just cut up the dose. So I do like 10 grams a day, but I won't have it at once. I'll do like 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, or I'll do like 5 and 5. So you can just basically, I find with a lot of people is mix it with food. So don't have an empty stomach, eat something, then have a dose, but break your dose up so you're not actually having that full 5 or 6 or whatever you're having at the moment. That's the main cause is on an empty stomach and the whole load at once, so just break it up.
I'm not really good at breakfast before any training, so I'm doing something that I'm not sure if it's wrong, but still my energy is low. I carb load the day before, so I eat carb in nice way, sleep, and things like that. Is that something usually recommended?
Yeah, definitely. So so it's like a concept of like potentially like it's carb loading to a degree, not obviously to the extent of like we're getting ready for a race or like a fight, but eating an abundance of carbohydrates the night before will restore that level of glycogen. And then what you want to do in the morning is that to make sure you have available sugars and glucose in the blood is have something before training. So get up in the morning, like dried fruit is really good, it's really easy to get, like dried fruit, dried mango, dried pineapple, like Gatorade, fruit juices, smoothies and stuff like that. So have a large carbohydrate load at night after all your training's done. Obviously have a great sleep in the morning, then have something like 30 to 60 minutes before training, something that's high in sugars. And that should be enough to kind of give you both the stored energy and the available in the blood. Yeah.
5 to 6 hours before. What would you recommend that last meal to be like generally?
So if you don't want to eat, or if you want to be, your last meal will be 4 to 6 hours before your fight. It's not about a particular meal, it's about having enough, hitting your kind of targets in those hours of waking up before you want to stop eating. So like a general meal, like I said before, is something easy digestible like white rice, white pasta, pancakes and stuff like that. But your problem is trying to get enough in to fill your body up. So then you'll have to probably after weigh-ins, maybe stay up a little bit later. But again, your balance is going to be digestion versus time. So maybe for you it's like having like a fried rice meal with a liter of fruit juice, for example. So you're mixing up solids and liquids and doing those kind of utilizing that because you're going to be very limited with your capacity and time. So you need to be going for like thinking about volume and digestibility. What's the goal with cutting salt and carbs? Again, so depending who the athlete is, we may cut it 3 days out in terms of, so I'll start with sodium. So cutting sodium out, we might start 3 days out from weigh-ins. Some days it might be 6. So generally for the guys doing bigger weight cuts, we'll start a low carbohydrate, low fiber, low sodium diet probably on the Sunday for the Friday alongside water loading. Because some guys, if you water load and have still a decent level of sodium in, they won't flush it, they will actually start retaining. So generally, this is for 24-hour weigh-ins, we cut sodium probably anywhere from 3 to 6 days out, depending on how much they have to cut. Carbohydrates, again, if it's a large or a pro level weight cut, we probably start again 6 days out, making sure that before that fight week started, they've had an abundance. So when you start to cut it down, it's a very dramatic difference. But we don't cut their calories, we basically just change their macronutrient distribution, put their protein a little bit high and their fat's way high and their carbs low. So you're still the same calories, but just a different macronutrient distribution. If you're an amateur guy and you have to weigh in the same day, you can't cut your carbs completely or your sodium, so you're just reducing. What we call is like for the amateur level guys is, a pro level guy can empty his tank because you've got enough time to fill his tank up. Whereas an amateur guy, we can only empty his tank half because we've only got time to fill up half, if that makes sense. So you've got to we do deplete them of glycogen through carb depletion to a degree, but only slightly. And same with sodium for the amateur guys, but with the pro level guys who've got an abundance of time to rehydrate and refuel, basically whipping both carbs and sodium out, 6 days out generally. Sometimes we'll leave sodium in it for a few more days.
What's the biggest
The most common mistakes I see, I think this is, I have like weekly discussions about, is just the lack of consistency with someone's intake. I think, you know, this is like fat loss, this is fight camp, this is everything, is that, like I said before, people are really good at eating a certain way or restrictively for a certain amount of time, and then they'll have like blowouts and those kind of things. So people often don't understand what's actually going into their body in terms of their averages. So I feel, you know, not saying that people have to be perfect, no one's perfect, no one has to hit 3,000 calories exactly every day, people go above and below, all those kind of things, but it's getting back to understanding what your intake is over 7 days. So once you have that consistency, then manipulating your weight and manipulating your intake is very easy. So if I eat 3,500 calories habitually and I want to lose a bit of weight, I just know I have to tone it down a little bit, 200, 300, 400 calories, my weight will come down. So that's the biggest thing, is that people are looking for quick fixes. People are looking for, you know, that's why fad diets are so popular, because people are looking to the most amount of progress in the shortest period of time. But if you go and create more of a lifestyle kind of habit approach to your nutrition, and what we call like the 52-week approach, then everything becomes a lot easier. You can enjoy your food, you have the balance. So it's lack of balance in that kind of mentality as well. So consistency, changing your mentality towards food, and, you know, cultivating a nutrition pattern that you can sustain for a long period of time, which is healthy and obviously functional.
How important is like meal timing for someone that works like a sort of job during the day and then trains?
So how important is meal timing? So meal timing is very important for training. So as a general rule, we say like eat anywhere from 1 to 3 hours before and 1 to 3 hours afterwards, obviously to make sure you're fueling your performance and you're fueling your recovery. But outside that, you know, you could say the old bodybuilder approach, eating every 2 to 3 hours to have the muscle protein synthesis and all those kind of elements. But most of the guys I work with in construction, or they have specific breaks. So as long as you're hitting your overall targets in terms of your daily targets, that's the most important thing. And the second thing is timing around your training. Outside of that, it's all about what your capacity is. So don't get too caught up in that, other than timing around your training, get the most out of it, and then hitting your overall targets. The rest of it is whatever you can do. So yeah. Depends who it is, but generally what I'm looking for is, for my general population clients, because a lot of people will say, I can't lose weight because of cortisol, I've got some sort of thyroid issue, there's some like underlying metabolic issue that people are feeling is, you know, stunting their ability to lose weight. I'm insulin resistant. So with my general population clients who struggle to lose weight, we look at those kind of factors, and like a metabolic panel, to see if there is any underlying kind of reasoning they're not progressing. 90% of the time, it's actually they're completely fine. It's like I said before, it's a lack of understanding of what they're putting in their body. I'm only having, I'm eating like, the people will send me their questionnaire and I'm like, oh, you're eating like an angel, but you're at 35% body fat. There's something missing between your honesty to yourself and your honesty to me, and what's actually the outcome, which is your body which has a lot of adipose tissue. And then when we go to like the more like active kind of athletic population, hormones are a big one. Every dude wants to have the most optimal level of testosterone and hormonal function, and that's kind of what we look at as a way of looking at like training load, if they're going too hard, if they're not giving themselves enough ability to recover, looking at what their nutrition is and how that's kind of resulting. Then obviously with our fighters, we're looking at their kidney function, overall just normal panels in terms of their kidney function, liver, thyroid, like I said, full blood panel. I like to look at the CRP, which is an inflammation marker, to see if, again, they're pushing it too much. It depends who it is, but generally, like, we call it like a sports hormone package. So I kind of tell my guys to do, which if you're interested, I'll tell you what's exactly on that. But it's a very unique thing to what someone's symptoms are or what their situation is. But I think blood work is one of the most underutilized things, because it's not that expensive anymore. And the thing is that the majority of general practitioners or just doctors in Australia, they won't, as long as you're within their range on their blood work, they're happy to let you go. Oh, no, you're okay. But that range is based on a very average person who has not trained or is not active. It's just a normal person who trains like 3 times a week, and the numbers are old. So looking at doing it through private companies and stuff like that and specifying kind of what you're looking for is obviously something, that's what I'm very passionate about. All my pro high-end guys get their blood work done so that we can specify their nutrition even more so than just off their training, body composition and fight weight.
How do you feel about Ozempic?
Ozempic or any of those weight loss drugs for athletes is obviously terrible idea. I had an athlete who I no longer work with, but she was a pro athlete. She took it on against our advice, and she ended up training really hard and going hypoglycemic, and her electrolyte balance, and she had a heart attack, ended up in hospital for 5 days. Because basically what it is that, you know, if you try and train intense, I won't go through all the detailed science of it, but if you try to have a high training load with something that is slowing your digestive rate, you've got no appetite, prone to like electrolyte imbalances and all these kind of things due to that lack of intake and fluids and all those kind of things. Definitely not something that the athletic population should do. It's very big in the bodybuilding world, but again, they're not really, so they are training hard, but like you're just trying to be a bodybuilder, you're not exerting that level of energy. For the general population, I'm not against it. I have clients who aren't very active, but they utilize it because it just, what they, speaking to someone before about it, just turns off the food noise. So we talk a lot of our clients about their relationship with food. I think everyone kind of who looks at Instagram or has been a competitive athlete, a whole variety of people are very food obsessed. I think there's something that's kind of a limiting factor in a lot of people in terms of progressing is not understanding their relationship with food or what drives them to eat, their triggers and those kind of things. Whereas those drugs just tend to turn to like switch that off for a bit and the food focus decreases. But again, if you were to utilize that as a non-athletic person, you'd have to do things like ensure you have a high protein diet so you don't lose a lot of muscle mass. You have to supplement religiously because you have a lot of deficiencies due to the lack of intake and the variety of your intake. And then obviously get your blood work done very regularly. And there's also a risk of getting pancreatic cancer and potentially effing up your digestive system over the long term.
Does that also apply to the bulletproof coffee?
Say again, sorry?
Bulletproof coffee.
Bulletproof coffee?
It has the same kind of effect on stomach, coffee, like eating.
Oh, the bulletproof coffee. Is that the one with the MCT oil? Yeah. That can also make you go to the toilet really quickly too, so yeah. Yeah, I think that the weight loss drugs are more so they play on certain hormones, depending which one in your body. So kind of one that slows your digestive rate, plays with certain hunger hormones. To be fair, those weight loss drugs are supposed to be for type 2 diabetics predominantly and helping people lose weight. But yeah, I think overall it's something that you shouldn't utilize if you're going to utilize it as someone who's not a active individual doing microdosing. But yeah, it's not my expertise, I'm not against it. People who really struggle with their relationship with food can be an absolute life changer, but not something to be the basis of your changing your diet and body composition. What's my opinion on peptides? Depending if you're in a tested organisation, I have no problem with peptides in terms of ethically. Performance enhancing drugs like testosterone and those kind of things obviously give you an advantage to a different degree because you're changing the level of power output and stuff like that, whereas peptide is generally a recovery tool. I think like, you know, we're going to be talking about that more as we, through our page, it's becoming such a big topic, but like things like BPC 157, TB 500, these kind of, and these other growth hormone analogs are very good for recovery. And I think that personally, if you're trying to make the most out of your career and you want to heal, and if you're an injury or something like that, something that I think could be a massive advantage, but just misunderstood to a degree, and I think people just blanket, you know, say you shouldn't do things, but I think if you have the right information, it's specific, it's within the confounds of, say, a contract. But again, you have to do your research or work with someone who has a deep knowledge in that, because people will just plug in stuff not knowing what it is, Ilya Tapori was drinking wine. That's what, isn't Vittori do that too? Yeah, so basically alcohol is a diuretic. So a diuretic is something that forces fluid out of the body. That's why if you've been on the sesh having a few beers, you're like, oh, my pee is so clear, because your body's flushing out water. So alcohol is a diuretic, so it can be utilised. I wouldn't, because you'd have a horrific headache. Most of the guys who cut weight, that level of dehydration get a headache. Red wine, I don't know if you guys drink red wine, it gives me a banging headache. So I wouldn't utilise anything. And any diuretic is completely dangerous to use, but that's less dangerous. But Vittori said it was a horrible idea. Yeah, I wouldn't use it. Bodybuilders actually do it the night before their contest. Someone told me they have like shots of tequila or vodka to force the fluid out of their body if they're not using other type of diuretics. There has been, people have in the past used diuretics, like maybe not the UFC level or that high level because they're tested, but had a client years ago who didn't tell us that she was in Thailand using hospital-grade diuretics. So when you're in hospital, when someone's got heart failure, because as dietitians we have to work in hospitals to get an understanding of like clinical nutrition and problems. She's using furosemide, which is like a hospital-grade diuretic, so she's pushing water out of her system for days before that. So she still had like 2 or 3 kilos to cut. We're like, oh, it's not too bad for her. Generally, that was all right. And then we'll put her in a bath and it just wasn't coming off. And we're like, what's going on here? And then basically, we ended up finding out she admitted to it, but that was a huge red flag because she could have basically gone to complete kidney shutdown and those kind of things. So people really don't understand. They're like, they get told things, especially in Thailand. You can walk to a chemist and get, oh, you can get diuretic, don't worry about your weight cut, go do your diuretic, blah, blah, blah. But you're basically telling your body to force things out, just putting immense stress under immense stress into your kidneys. And then if you try to do a weight cut on top of that, even worse. Like there is no, that's all right. There was a case in Melbourne, where we're from in Australia, where potentially someone we don't know what the cause was, but potentially he was using a diuretic and he ended up passing away from multi-organ failure because he cut weight, potentially used a diuretic or some sort of PED kind of around that realm, and then he cut the weight, made weight, didn't look too great, collapsed after the fight, went to hospital, complete organ failure, and he ended up passing away at like 22. So yeah. I think IV drips are fantastic. I think they should be used. The UFC generally banned them a long time ago for 2 reasons, because they thought it was going to prevent large weight cuts, and 2, people were flushing their body of things that didn't want to be seen in blood tests. I think that it definitely hasn't deterred people from cutting large amounts of weight. It's one of the most efficient ways to rehydrate the body, especially with a compromised digestive system. So if you're in an organisation where you can utilise them alongside a very detailed hydration plan orally, it can be utilised quite well, because you've got to make sure that you have an understanding, or the person you're working with has an understanding of what contents of that IV bag is in there, in conjunction to what you're putting in your body in terms of the level of electrolyte content in your oral solutions as well. Because some people just go bang, 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 and just overload their body with electrolytes, which is not the way to do it. Because if you do too many electrolytes, I'm not going to go, this is going to be too boring for people, but if you do too many electrolytes and you're drinking too much, you can actually, you've got to have a gradient between your blood and your kidneys and your body. If you have too many electrolytes, kind of your blood sugar, you throw off the gradient. So you've got to kind of be very, very scientific with your solute load or your electrolyte load, and that's what can be skewed away if you're doing lots of electrolytes fluidly through oral solutions, and then you're also getting IV, and then how many bags of IV you're getting. So you can utilize it. You should be a bit smarter or have someone who understands the process to kind of calculate your electrolyte or solute load over that period of time. how do I manage my athletes' calories in terms on their fight week? I generally have them on the same calories as the week before, but we just change the macronutrient distribution. So we just obviously, carbs go to basically nothing, but then fats go high. And it depends how much they've got to cut weight. So if they're very close and we still want to manipulate easy, we might even go into a bit of a maintenance or surplus level, but generally it's the same as the week, if not a maintenance level, just change the macronutrient distribution.
How many weeks out of the fight will you start practicing like that weight cut? Just to sort of start?
The heat acclimation stuff, you can do it year round, but generally minimum of like 6 to 8 weeks. I would prefer 8 to 12 weeks, but 6 to 12.
Is that like a full cut or just sort of?
No. Heat acclimation isn't cutting weight. Heat acclimation is just like, say we're doing 8 weeks out. Week 1 is like 2 times a week sitting in a sauna for 15 minutes. And then week 2, or so which would be week 7, the fight camp, you're doing 3 times a week at 15 minutes. Or you're changing the amount of time you're in it. So you're just slowly getting your body used to that environment, or having baths and those kind of things. So it's just a slow progression of your exposure to that heat. Because one of the biggest elements to, everyone talks about dehydration in terms of the dangers of weight cutting, but what's actually not more of a danger, but an equal amount of danger, and something that kind of goes unspoken about, is heat stress. Because heat stress is what fucks people up a lot more than what dehydration does. As I said, the body can deal with a lot of dehydration, but if your body is overly heat stressed, then you'll have a very low sweat rate. That's when people, if you've seen people in baths who like, they're doing all right and they're kind of getting a bit stressed and overwhelmed, and then the next bath they only lost like 500 grams in an hour because the stress hormones and the heat stress has kind of kicked in, which makes the process even worse. So that's, you obviously want to be a better weight cutter, but you want to be able to deal with that environment to prevent heat stress as well. And that's why you got to control the bath temperature as well, or the sauna. The hotter is not better.
Is it good for you to reduce like your risk of heart attack as well?
Yeah, because the heat acclimation stuff, as your body gets more adapted to that environment, it's less cardiac strain as well as psychological strain. So that's all plays a factor as well. And you've got to, so it's like, people think hot is better, so I've got to be, like, the sauna's going to be as hot as it is, or the bath's going to be as hot as it can be. That's not the case. You just need the environment to be hot enough that your internal core temperature reaches a certain level to induce a sweat response, and then you're just going to maintain that. So that's not going hotter. So you can start off hot and then go a little bit down and then just maintain that.
What do you think about hot and cold therapy? Like sometimes I go to the sauna and I'll get in the ice bath afterwards, and then I'll leave them.
Not on fight week, definitely not on fight. Generally, I think if that's something you like to do, then 100%. I think the research on ice baths has been a bit here or there. Yeah. I don't know if a lot of people in the field, like practitioners who are breaking the science, don't seem to think there's a whole lot of benefits to that therapy. But I think if you feel it does, if you personally it is a benefit to you and you feel better from it, then utilize it. All right, any more questions?
Simon, you got a question?
I was just thinking about Pete's question last year.
Was that the sex one? The semen retention one? That was a good one. On fight week, should you do semen retention? Is that the one?
What was it? Jerking off on fight week.
Yeah. Well, if you want to get a few 100 grams, I don't know. Yeah. I know someone who's tried that. They will remain nameless, but I know on weigh-in day they did perform an act to try to get some fluids out of their body. So I don't know how successful that was, but yeah. But semen retention doesn't increase your testosterone levels, boys. Doesn't increase your testosterone levels. That was the thought process behind it. Anything?
We'll finish up. Who's the most professional, best player about the week? I know that loads of the ones
The best client?
as in like weight, they just fucking challenge.
Not to blow smoke up his ass, but he's right there. He's my best mate and my long-term client. Yeah, he actually was the mate. No, but Joe's been he's my best mate, my long-term client for like probably like one of my first clients ever. And I think the way he describes it is that he's choosing to do this. And he also said stuff like, I'd rather die than not miss weight. So I think that mentality is like something that stands out for sure, because it's just like, you're choosing to do this, is your career, this is your thing. So like, when it comes to weight cutting, like I said, with like the heat stress and all these environmental factors, that the mentality towards it is such a pivotal part of it being easy and stress-free and successful. So those are the kind of things. And then obviously you've got people like Volk and Izzy who are just anomalies in a lot of ways, but a lot of just the way that they view things. I think that the top pros have this way of like, they've chosen to do this as their career and it just needs to be done. So you can either make it very stressful and hard on yourself, or you can make it what it needs to be, which is just get the job done. So if my advice would be not to harden up, but to kind of change your perspective on it and understand why you're doing it, and then the process becomes a lot easier. And obviously surround yourself, I think it's a good doing, surround yourself by a great team, and then everything becomes easier. All right. Thank you. Oh yeah, so if you want to have a chat or anything like that, if you want to work with us, anyone who trains here gets like 25% off our services and stuff like that. But just reach out to me. I'm the combat dietitian, so you can reach out to me or Doherty, which is the fight dietitian, either of us. If you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you. That's good. Oh, I gotta move now.